In Austin, I'm Mark Mullins. We now have an update on the error Austin police made with their emergency response alert system while a shooter was still on the loose last month. The alert was lifted by mistake and then was quickly reissued while students were arriving to schools nearby in the Barton Hills neighborhood. Police ended up catching that suspect, Brandon Thompson. Austin Police Chief Lisa Davis says the conflicting emergency alerts were the result of human error. She says a lack of communication between changing shifts led to a shelter-in-place alert to be lifted prematurely. Chief Davis says now they're ensuring someone in a command position is present to make those changes, not just whoever is on shift. She says meeting regularly will hopefully fill in those gaps.
So I know we are meeting with them, setting up meetings, so we're going to start meeting regularly with them, maybe monthly, with Chief Sneed and his group there on what's going on. I think that communication will enhance what we do here. Again, even being there on scene, it's just not enough because it failed. And so they're getting real-time information, but somewhere in there, that communication, it lapsed and it failed.
Davis says they're looking to change communication citywide during emergencies. They're looking for solutions that don't involve people signing up for alerts on an individual basis. The IRS is furloughing about 40% of workers because of the ongoing government shutdown. Daniel Perot spoke with some furloughed workers whose emotions are now running high.
They're calling it the Twilight Zone. Is what it feels like that we're in right now. It's the Twilight Zone.
For families like Kimberly Deshays,
like trying to move mountains with mountains on your back.
The gridlock in Washington brings tough choices.
I'm looking at my bills. I'm looking at my life and how, where I'm going to make these cuts. The kids, it's Halloween time, so it's a lot going on with them. They have things coming up.
Deshay and her husband have both been furloughed by the IRS, political pawns on a chessboard they have no control of.
It's a lot, trying to balance it out, making work-life balance, and there's really not a balance when you're in the Twilight Zone.
They took telework away.
Local union president Eddie Walker says chaos and confusion has rippled through IRS offices, with workers told they were furloughed and then hours later called back and told they were exempt.
There's been this breaking of our work fabric. And, and then now we're trying to stitch it up again.
Walker and Deshay joined Congressman Greg Casar Thursday for a press conference outside U.S. Senator John Cornyn's downtown Austin office.
We need to put taxpayers before billionaires. There is no reason the federal government should be shut down.
Democrats are standing firm on their demands, a funding bill that extends Obamacare subsidies and rescinds Republicans' cuts to Medicaid.
Senator Cornyn, pass the bill now to protect our health care, to stop raising costs, and to reopen the government.
In a social media post, Senator Cornyn laying the blame on Democrats because they voted down a clean funding bill and saying Casar should be urging Senate Democrats to support that bill instead of engaging in political stunts. As Republicans and Democrats point fingers, families are trying to get by with what they have, with no end in sight.
Daniel Perot reporting, and for those who are furloughed, things are only going to get harder. Federal workers are expected to get one more paycheck at the end of this week, but that will be their last paycheck until the shutdown ends. The state of Texas is launching an investigation into the online chat platform Discord. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced that his office is looking into the platform's content, accusing Discord of exposing minors to sexual exploitation and extremist content. The statement also mentions that the suspect accused of murdering conservative influencer Charlie Kirk confessed to the killing on the platform before being taken into custody. AG Paxton says Discord is legally obligated to prevent minors from being exposed to certain content and accused it of contributing to, quote, a wave of nihilistic violence across the country. Discord sent us a statement saying it does not comment on legal matters. The platform wrote that it requires all of its users to be at least 13 years old and uses advanced tech and safety teams to remove content that violates its policies.
So Robert has taken one small step back from the brink.
A Texas man's execution is delayed for now. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals granted a stay of execution for Robert Robertson. He's convicted of murdering his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki Curtis, more than 20 years ago. He was set to die by lethal injection on October 16th, but now that won't happen. The court granted a pause on the state's plan to execute Robertson, citing the junk science law. It allows a person convicted of a crime to seek relief if the evidence used against them is no longer credible. Prosecutors argued that Robertson hit and violently shook his daughter and that shaken baby syndrome led to her death. But Robertson's lawyers say the girl died from complications related to pneumonia and that her autopsy was not reliable. With the appeals court's decision, Robertson's case now goes back to district court. Robertson's attorney says the exact timeline of what happens next is unclear, but she hopes it happens quickly.
But I'm determined to push this as fast as possible. Robert has been waiting for 23 years already. So I am going to be all about speed.
The appeals court decision comes after a bipartisan group of Texas politicians pushed for Robertson's execution to be stopped. They say he never got a fair trial, and that should change now.
Look, if you've taken a look at Robert's case over the last 20 years, then you see how many flaws there are and why he deserves another day in court. And I think that's why you've seen bipartisan support from some of the most conservative members in the legislature to an Austin representative like myself fighting for Robert to get that second look.
No jury has ever had the opportunity to hear the mountain of potentially exculpatory evidence that points not only to his lack of guilt, but potentially strongly for his actual innocence claims.
To this day, Robertson says he's innocent. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, as well as some medical experts and other family members of Nikki, maintain the girl died because of child abuse and that Robertson had a history of hitting his daughter. A Taylor man will spend the rest of his life serving an 80-year sentence for driving under the influence. Back in 2023, police arrested 60-year-old Thomas Glenn Holman after an off-duty officer reported seeing him drive recklessly from Granger to Taylor, at one point reaching 60 miles an hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. His blood alcohol level was .292. That's more than 3 times the legal limit. Prosecutors say Holman had 4 prior DWI convictions dating back to the 80s. At the time of his arrest, he was out on bond for a different DUI. Those are the headlines in Austin. I'm Mark Mullins.